Good evening and welcome to my channel long after midnight, Saturday morning, the 5th of March. It's like 1:30 in the morning, 1:30 a.m. And while it's quiet and peaceful here in Sweden, I know what happens in Ukraine. Sirens, bombs, missiles, shootings, horrible things happen. Vladimir Putin is trying to kill as many Ukrainian citizens, as many Ukrainian women, children as possible. This is a video which has to do with that, because today I want to present you a couple of Ukrainian authors to read. Authors in translation. 7 Ukrainian authors plus 3 in this video that I would like to pinpoint to you that you could read, that you should read. So here they are, 7 plus 3 authors from Ukraine. Good evening and welcome to the video. I have 7 authors that are translated into English with their works, 7 living authors, 7 contemporary authors, and I have an additional 3 of them, bonus 3 authors, because I realized that there is actually more translation of Ukrainian literature into the German language than into English. So I have 7 books for you and 7 authors who are translated into English and 3 bonus authors who are translated into German if you understand German, or if you just want to jot down their names on a notepad and maybe read them in the future when they hopefully will be translated into English. The first one is a very famous author. She has been the subject of the post-Soviet book club, which actually has gained new actuality by the things that happen right now, because there's this kind of Soviet fear that has returned to Ukraine and Russia, at least, both countries, I think, and the terror to Ukraine and the fear to Russia. The first author is Oksana Zabushko. We read her book, Museum of Abandoned Secrets, a masterful book about the Ukrainian history in the post-Soviet book club last year. It was actually the second book in the post-Soviet book club. But today I'm here for Fieldwork in Ukrainian Sex by Oksana Zabushko, translated from the Ukrainian by Halyna, Hryn. And this book was published in Ukraine in 1996, and it was the most successful novel in Ukraine in the 1990s. The novel is narrated in the first-person streams of thought by a sharp-tongued poet with an irreverently honest voice. She is visiting professor of Slavic studies at Harvard University in the United States, and her exposure to American values and behaviors conspires with her yearning to break free from Ukrainian conventions. In her despair over a recently ended affair, she turns her attention to the details of her lover's abusive behavior. In detailing the power her Ukrainian lover wielded over her, and in admitting the underlying reasons for her attraction to him, she begins to see the chains that have defined her as a Ukrainian woman, and in doing so exposes and calls into question her country's culture of fear and repression at the very time that it wrestled its way toward independence. This is Oksana Zabushko, Fieldworks in Ukrainian Sex, the first title I want to mention here. The second title is by an author who was born in 1974, and his name is Serhiy Sadan. The novel is called Depeche Mode, like the band, and it's translated from the Ukrainian by Myroslav Shkandrij. In 1993, tragic turbulence takes over Ukraine in the post-communist spin-off. As if in somnambulism, Soviet war veterans and upstart businessmen listened to an American preacher, of whose type there were plenty at the time in the post-Soviet territory. In Kharkiv, a city that has been bombed hardly and terribly in the last couple of days, the young communist headquarters are now an advertising agency, and a youth radio station creates a feature on the Irish folk band Depeche Mode and the role of the harmonica in the struggle against capitalist oppression. And so the Western songs make their way into ordinary Ukrainian homes of ordinary people. In the middle of this craze, three friends, an anti-Semitic Jew, Doc Pavlov, an unfortunate entrepreneur, Vasya the communist, and the narrator, Zhadan, 19 years of age and unemployed, seek to find their old pal Sasha Carburetor to tell him that his stepfather shot himself dead. Characters confront elements of their reality and, tainted with traumatic survival fever, embark on a sad, dramatic, and a bit grotesque adventure, which is the novel by Serhiy Sadan called Depeche Mode. And I have realized that actually what's written in the novel in 1993, when it said that preachers from all kinds of the West are coming to Ukraine, I was living in Russia in 1992-93, and I experienced the same thing when I worked at the University of Omsk in Siberia. There were lots of preachers. The English students that we had in the department, they were always telling me, I was smoking with them in the breaks, and they were always telling me, oh, tomorrow we got visitors from the US, and they were so enthusiastic about meeting people from the United States or from the UK. But then afterwards, I would ask them, how was the visit? And they would all say, some more preachers came to try to get our souls, you know. Lots of preachers and churches went to the former Soviet Union, and also in this book, Depeche Mode. Number 2 on my list. Number 3 is an author called Yuri Androkovich, born in 1960, and I chose his novel The Moscoviad, translated by Vitaly Chemetsky. The literary dormitory at Moscow University becomes a kind of Russian Grand Hotel, serving the last supper of empire to a host of writers gathered from every corner of the continent and beyond. Young poets from Vietnam, Mongolia, Yakutia, Uzbekistan, Russia and Ukraine assemble to study, to drink, frolic and explore each other and the decaying city around them. When the supper turns into a bacchanal, who's surprised? The empire betrayed its drum and thus doomed itself to disintegration. Part howl, part literary slapstick, part joyful dirge, charged with the brashness of youth, betraying the vision of the permanent outsider, Andrukovich's novel suggests that literature really is news that stays news. Funny, buoyant, flamboyant, groundbreaking, and as revelatory today as when it was first published in Ukrainian, the Moscoviad remains a literary milestone. In spirit and intellectual brio, Andrukhovich, whose irreverence makes Borat seems pious, is kin to the great Haldor Laxness and the venerable David Foster Wallace. That sounds so interesting, and I hope that you want to take a dive into Ukrainian literature. Number 4, Tango of Death by Yuri Vinichok, translated from the Ukrainian by Michael M. Naydan. Tango of Death is a novel about Lviv, Lemberg in German, of the 30s. Creation has a share of some insurgent homelands, Ukrainian, German, Polish, and Jewish. And Lemberg, or Lviv, today is the city, the town in western Ukraine where lots of people from Kiev and from Kharkiv and from other places on the Ukraine flee. It's their last station on their way to security in the West. More than 1 million people have already fled the country, and many come to go to Lviv and try to make it to the West. The manner of Yuri Vinichok can be recognized as a myth. The floorings look like a must, which is familiar to us from our literature. And yet the manner of writing in this novel is the same as the new Vynnychuk, with a hoarse plot in which there are whispers of an old manuscript and the mystery of the Tango of Death, as if they were cinched in the name of the Yanivsky concentration camp near Lvov, or Lviv. Lvov, the Russian name, Lviv, the Ukrainian name. This is a book you don't read, but you live with it. Number 5, Raven's Way by Vasyl Shkliar. Vasyl Shkliar was born in 1951. This is a historical novel. In 1921, after 4 years of war, the Bolsheviks conquer Ukraine, but Raven and Veremy hide in the forest with other Cossacks and continue their struggle. When Veremy dies in battle, the communists secretly follow the burial party, but when they dig up the coffin, they find a cryptic note instead of a corpse. Meanwhile, Raven thinks he is dead when a grenade blows him off his horse, so is surprised to wake up in the witch Yevdosia's house. That night, a woman appears in his dreams and makes love to him, only to disappear, leaving him with a scent of orchids. Vasyl Shkliar has used authentic KGB reports to tell the story of Europe's most remarkable resistance movement for the first time. Number six is an author who was born Russian, who was born in Russia, who moved to Ukraine many decades ago, who became a Ukrainian citizen, but who still writes in Russian, and who now lives somewhere close to Lviv, coming from Kiev, and he is one of the targets. It's supposed to be a name on the death lists of the Russian aggressors. This is Andrey Kurkov and his novel Death and the Penguin, the one that made him famous. And his novels, published in Russian, are since 2013 not anymore published in Russia. Victor is depressed. His lover has dumped him, his short stories are too short, and the light has gone off in his dingy apartment. His only companion is Misha, the penguin he rescued from Kiev's zoo when it couldn't feed the animals anymore. Misha is the silent witness to Victor's despair and joins in a celebration, fish and vodka, when Victor's luck seems to turn. He's commissioned to write obituaries. The weird thing is that the editor wants him to select subjects who are still alive, the movers and the shakers of the new post-communist society. Death and the Penguin by Andrey Kurkov. And the last one in English, number 7, is the poet Ilya Kaminsky, who is deaf. And his poem collection that I would recommend here is Dancing in Odessa. Odessa, a city in the south of Ukraine, which is right now confronted with Russian warships threatening to bomb the city, threatening to destroy the city from the south. Dancing in Odessa. Ilya Kaminsky is the winner of the prestigious Tupelo Prize, Dorset Prize, selected by poet and MacArthur Genius Grant recipient Eleanor Wilner, who says, "I'm so happy to have a manuscript that I believe in so powerfully poetry with such a deep music. I love it." One might spend a lifetime reading books by emerging poets without finding the real thing. The writer, to paraphrase Emily Dickinson, can take the top of your head off. Ilya Kaminsky is the real thing. Impossibly young, this Russian immigrant makes the English language sing with the sheer force of his music, a wondrous irony as Ilya Kaminsky has been deaf since the age of 4. In Odessa itself, a city famous for its drunk tailors, huge gravestones of rabbis, horse owners and horse thieves, and most of all, for its stuffed and baked fish, Kaminsky dances with the strangest and the most recognizable of our bedfellows in a distinctive and utterly brilliant language. A language so particular and deaf that it transcends all of our expectations and is by turns luminous and universal. And now we get to the German titles, the bonus titles. If you read German, if you can read German, you can read them in German, and hopefully they might be translated into English. The first novel is called Frau Müller hat nicht die Absicht mehr zu bezahlen, and it was written by Natalka Sniadanko. It means like Mrs. Müller doesn't want to pay more. And this has been called the Thelma and Louise in Berlin. It's the story of two women, of Christina and Solomia, who are young, they're smart and self-confident, and they're still looking for the good thing, for the perfect life. They have a sense of adventure, and that's why they are being compared to Thelma and Louise. So they decide to move away from Lemberg, from Lviv, and they want to go to Athens in Greece, but they sort of end up in Berlin, Germany, and they have love affairs, and they have strange employers who give them jobs, and they fight themselves through their new lives. It is different, but is it better? This has been called in Germany the cool new voice of the Ukraine. Natalia Sniadanko lives in Lviv, which has been called the Berlin of Western Ukraine, and she writes about this city. She is courageous, she is awakened, and she's very honest, and tells a story about two women who are leaving Lviv to live the life. And without melodramatic, this sort of book gives you the feeling of these two cities, Lviv and Berlin, and their history. And Sniadanko's novels, which are very famous already in Ukraine, present us in Germany and hopefully also in English, in the English-speaking world, with a new cool voice fresh voice from the Ukraine, a great discovery. The number 9 novel is another title translated into German, which is called Heute fahre ich nach Morgen, von Kateryna Babkina. Today I travel to tomorrow, by Katarina Babkina. And this novel is about the flurry, the heat of a Ukrainian summer. The young, self-confident and also adventure-seeking young artist Sonia enjoys her life. And she doesn't have to think about tomorrow. Every day gives her something new in this country, so why should she settle for something? But in the middle of these summer days, her way of living a worryless life comes slowly to an end. Because overnight, her boyfriend leaves her, and she is suddenly pregnant, and new questions are facing her in this life. The hunger after life and answers. The world is calling her. And this situation is for Sonia a very deep cut, a very deep change in her life, but also a new perspective. And behind the wheel of an old Lada car, she goes on a trip, and actually she is looking for herself. On the nightly streets that she's traveling to, she finds very strange people with even more strange stories. And where is this adventure going to lead her? Will she find what she looks for? And which role plays Kai, the secret guy with his very strange business idea to sell wonders, who's going through Europe? This is, in German, the novel Heute fahre ich nach Morgen von Kateryna Babkina. Today I travel to tomorrow, by Kateryna Babkina. And this last novel, the number 10 Ukrainian novel for you to read, is actually a short story collection by different women. The editor is Mariana Safka, and this collection is called Skype Mama. Skype Mama by Mariana Safka, stories from the Ukraine translated into German, unfortunately not yet translated into English. In 11 stories that play somewhere between the Ukraine and the west of Europe, this book tells you in 11 stories by 11 different authors the stories and the fate of modern workers, female workers, who are migrating workers. Very often it's just the sheer need for money to sort of make a living and not adventure that brings them to the offices, to the kitchens, and to the living rooms of the West. In the Ukraine, there's the number of families where you have at least one part of the parents, mother or father, working abroad. It was estimated before the war up to 1 million. 1 million families are separated because one of the parents would work in Western countries. That means that at least 1 million children are staying behind with just one parent. What happens when the mother and the child, Ma and their child, are only Skyping? When the distance is so big as it is, and when Mama is not at home? Why isn't she there? And where is she? When does she come home? And then, when she comes, 11 Ukrainian authors give their answer in this book, Skype Mama, which was a book before the war. Now we could write even more and worse histories. I think this collection of Ukrainian authors, of 10 Ukrainian authors, I really hope that you are going to read this, that you're going to read Ukrainian literature, because it shows us, it gives us proof that Ukraine is a country, and that Ukraine has a language, and that Ukraine has a culture and a voice, contrary to the propaganda of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has neglected the existence of the Ukrainian people. I put a link down below as well, the names and the authors, and I also put a link down below how you can help Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees right now. Thank you very much for watching this video. We are in hard times, and there are many ways of supporting Ukraine, and I think one way is to really try to deal with this country and also with its literature. So I hope that you find some pleasure in this hard times by reading a Ukrainian author. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye-bye.